What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Knittel. Today is Monday, July 2nd. It is day 19 of the World Cup, day 3 of the first round of the knockout stages. Both my brothers are off doing things. I thought Matt was going to be back, but he got pulled into some other things. So it's just going to be me today recapping the wild action. Belgium versus Japan just finished in dramatic fashion. But before we get to talking about that, I want to talk about Brazil versus Mexico. If you are watching live on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to interact with me as I go along here, so it's not just me just talking to myself. My brothers may join as we go along here, but I don't have a ton of confidence. So I think it's just going to be me, which is slightly disappointing because we had some things that I really wanted to talk about. So if I throw some things out, again, love to hear your thoughts on that. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you very much for tuning in. But we also record live on YouTube about 15 to 30 minutes after the last match ends each day. All right, let's get to the matches from today. We have Brazil versus Mexico was the first match of the day. We had Brazil beating Mexico 2-0. Mexico goes out in the round of 16 for, I believe, the 7th straight tournament, and Brazil progresses to the quarterfinals for the 7th straight tournament. Both little fun facts there, so those trends continued. First point of note, Rafa Marquez starting at center midfield for Mexico. Definitely a bold decision by Juan Carlos Osorio, who is known for making bold decisions. I thought it was odd. He's a 39-year-old player in the modern game. Lack of mobility, especially at center midfield, is not necessarily a trait that you want to see out there. And I think we saw that in some instances, and Rafa was ultimately pulled at halftime. But again, it was an odd decision from him, especially kickoff. I know it was 91 degrees. I know they said the humidity was not quite bad, so it didn't feel that bad, but again, it was interesting for me. Also, if anyone out there happens to know what was up with all the Mexican players with the dyed blonde hair, Chicharito, they had Layun, and there was Salcido. So they had a bunch of players with dyed hair that hadn't had it in the past. So again, I don't know what was up with that, but something I noticed. With Rafa basically functioning as the holding midfield, getting to the actual game, I thought Guardado and Herrera, sorry, I can't speak, were a little bit freed to get forward more. And we saw that in a couple instances where they got free and they ran to the corners, and then the Mexican team was able to find them in space. And Mexico had some pretty dangerous chances early on in that match. So the first 25 minutes, I thought Mexico was generating better chances and had the better of play. And then Brazil kind of had a flurry of chances and sort of roared to life. And then from then on, again, I didn't doubt Brazil too much. And Mexico just couldn't get over that hump. Brazil would just have moments where they would almost feel like they sprung to life and just could get by Mexican defenders and just get in and pass around them and creative movement. And so from then on, it was just kind of, you could kind of see the inevitability of the result. Now, I don't know if this is a requirement from World Cup matches, but it seems like every match we have at least one team has wingers that swap flanks, like in the first half, about halfway through the first half. And so we saw that from Mexico around the 35th minute. Vela and Lozano flopped wings, didn't really impact the match too much. And again, we saw that kind of in every match where I've noted that the wingers have flopped wings. It hasn't really generated, too much difference in attack. But again, it was just a little tactical wrinkle there. Now, Mexico, when they were in possession, they were spreading so wide. Their wingers were on the touchline. Their center backs were dropping deep, and the field was just getting really spread out. And that is a interesting way to play. I mean, you want to maximize space when you're attacking, but you need to have a ton of confidence in being able to possess the ball if you're going to open yourself up that much, because as soon as you lose the ball, that creation of space becomes a detriment to you. And, Brazil getting the ball and with those acres of space with the talented players that Brazil has, it was just a dangerous game for Mexico to be playing. But again, it was an interesting sort of tactical wrinkle to watch. Halftime, Rafa is pulled, Layun comes on, and Juan Carlos Osorio did something interesting. He moved his right back, Alvarez, to defensive midfield, and he brought Layun on at right back. Not something you usually see with, moving a defender when Brazil hadn't generated too much in the first half. I thought Mexico's defense was playing fairly well, and I just thought it was just tinkering too much. And then Brazil gets the goal, and shortly after that, Juan Carlos Osorio then brings off Alvarez and puts on Jonathan Dos Santos. And so I don't know why that Jonathan Dos Santos sub didn't just come at halftime then. And then you had Layun, who could have been freed into, a different role. And again, I thought Alvarez was fine in the first half. So again, didn't necessarily agree with that sub. At the halftime sub, I thought bringing Dos Santos in, was a fine sub later on. But before the Dos Santos sub, Brazil takes the lead. 51st minute, Neymar collects the ball out wide. He drives at Layun. Layun forces him inside to where there's a bunch of Mexican players. It's, Layun's not a defender, and so I think he did the right thing. He forced Neymar inside to where he had help. And so Mexican players converged on Neymar. He drew about 3 or 4 defenders, heeled it off to Willian. And Willian's just change of pace and first touch to get out of there. I mean, he does this all the time, but he's just got that turn of pace where he's there and then all of a sudden he's gone. And so he takes one touch, kind of 2 touches. He takes one little touch and then another touch just out into space, blows by the Mexican defense, swings in a hard, low cross shot, whatever you want to call it, but across the face of goal. Neymar continues his run around the backside and ultimately taps it in. So just a well-worked goal from Brazil, and it all kind of started with Neymar, and he was there to finish it off. So he did well on that particular play. Willian, he played all right in the first half, and he was more involved than he had been in the previous game. But the second half, he really started to get more involved. He was just gliding by guys, and on the dribble, he is so incredible at, like I was talking about before, just that change of pace and pulling away from defenders and just gliding by people. And so he was doing that throughout the second half. 56th minute, that's when the Dos Santos sub happens, and Juan Carlos Osorio brings out Alvarez. Again, I just didn't understand why Juan Carlos Osorio didn't put in Dos Santos for Rafa earlier in the, at halftime. So again, 2 interesting subs that, with Rafa initially in the lineup, and then, Alvarez moving him off the back line, just weird things that I didn't think necessarily Juan Carlos Osorio needed to do in that instance. 3 or 4 chances for Mexico in second. And so sorry, I was just reading my notes here, and so sometimes I forget what the heck I'm talking about. Mexico did have a handful of opportunities, especially on the break, where they were in good situations and it was either even numbers or Mexico with a slight advantage. And almost every instance, there was 3 or 4 that I can remember specifically. All of the players with the ball chose to shoot rather than lay it off to another player. So usually what you want to do is you want to draw defenders in as you're driving at them and then lay it off when a guy becomes open. And we saw that kind of in the other match, and we'll talk about that. But all the Mexican players chose to shoot outside of the 18, just low percentage shots. And, Matt and I have, we're all for shooting from outside the box when the opportunity presents itself and it makes sense. But almost in every single one of these situations, it didn't make sense. It would have made sense to draw a defender in and then lay it off to your attacker who's in a better spot. And so again, I don't know if it was glory of scoring against Brazil, if this was just they thought that was the best opportunity or what, but I thought that was the wrong decision in almost every instance, and specifically all those came in the second half. So again, not great from Mexico in that instance. My internet crashed in the 60th minute, and since I cut the cord, that caused issues and chaos for me for a couple minutes. So anything that happened between the 60th and 65th minute, I didn't really see. Eventually, I was able to get it back up on my phone. But if anything happened in that time, I can't really comment because I missed that. 71st minute. This was the controversial incident with Neymar and Layun. So Neymar's off the side of the field, laying kind of on top of the ball, delaying the game. You see this from players a lot. Layun comes over to get the ball off of him and very clearly steps on Neymar's ankle. And this is where I would love to get anyone who's watching live on YouTube, please let me know your thoughts. And, if my brothers join, I want to come back to this because this was a controversial play. And for me, Layun knows exactly what he's doing there. He is clearly trying to step on Neymar. And so he steps on him, he puts his weight on there, and then he acts like he didn't know what he was doing. Neymar reacts the way you would expect Neymar to react because he is kind of a drama queen. And so he jumps up, starts writhing on the ground, rolling over, just being ultimately dramatic. But you can understand it because if he doesn't react to that, the referees don't even see it, don't even necessarily know that Layun did this dirty thing. And for me, I think that's a red card on Layun. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to hurt, maybe not injure like long term, but he's trying to hurt Neymar. He's trying to physically do something that puts him off his game. And again, he's going out of his way to be violent. Yes, is it violent to the point where it's leg breaking or something like that? No, it's not to that extent, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and it's just really, really dirty. At the end of the day, I could have seen a yellow card. The referee chose not to give anything, which was interesting for me, but again, I can somewhat understand Neymar's reaction there. It was way overblown. But again, if you don't react at all, then the referees don't even know that a dirty play happened. So I somewhat sympathize with Neymar. And so for me, that's kind of where I fall on it. I'm certain Christian, my one brother, does not feel that way. And I would love to get Matt's thoughts on it. So if they join, I'll get to them. But, if you're listening to the podcast in the future, please tweet at us at BT Soccer Pod. Let me know your thoughts on that whole Neymar incident with Layun. Do you think Layun just did it accidentally? Do you think that it should have been a red card? Do you think that it was fine being nothing? We'd love to hear from you on that front. Next incident happens kind of in the 89th minute. Again, Mexico had chances throughout the second half, weren't able to convert, but then 89th minute, as Mexico is pushing forward, they play kind of a lazy pass in the midfield. Fernandinho steps up fantastically, plays a ball out wide to Neymar. At that point, half of Mexico's defense had stepped forward, and the other half had kind of sagged back a bit. And so Neymar was through on goal, kept onside, so no risk of offside there. He's driving at Ochoa from the left side of Brazil's, if Brazil's going forward from the left side. He gets a toe poke on the ball. Ochoa, the Mexican keeper, who had a pretty good game, he had a bunch of really, really nice saves throughout the match, makes a great save with his toes it out wide, and Firmino, who had come on earlier, was crashing to the net and taps it in. So good goal from Brazil, good kind of attacking play. It's unfortunate for Mexico, but you can understand they're pushing numbers forward. Obviously, that's going to open up gaps. And again, I wanted to have this debate about Firmino versus Jesus. My brothers aren't here, so I'm going to do my best to have an argument with myself in this instance. But if you have thoughts on Firmino versus Jesus and who should be Brazil's starting striker, please let us know. For me, I understand the sides of. I'm going to present both arguments. So Jesus is somebody who stays further forward. He's more of a traditional number 9. He's going to play along the defensive line and try to run in behind. He's going to occupy the center backs, and he's not going to deviate from that front line too much. He may come out wide, but again, he's going to stay very high, kind of stretch the field for Brazil. Firmino, on the other hand, is more of a false 9. So someone who likes to drop off of the defense. He likes to work back, and he likes to get into pockets of space and then let his wingers and attacking midfielders run in behind him. And it's a way to confuse center backs and defenders in that, should they go with Firmino or should they back off? If they back off, then he's in space and he can turn and run at them and then causes other problems. If they come with him, it opens up space in behind. So there are benefits to both sides of play. Both work hard defensively. I know my brothers were going at it pretty hard on our text chat that who works harder defensively, but I think both actually have a pretty strong commitment to defending. So I don't think you lose anything by putting in Firmino over Jesus or vice versa. So they both work pretty hard defensively. It's just more, I think Brazil likes Jesus and Chiche. The Brazil coach likes Jesus because he stretches the field a bit more and leaves more space for Coutinho and Neymar to operate in. If Firmino comes in there, it's less about maximizing space for Coutinho and Neymar. It's more about getting into areas where Firmino could combo play with Neymar and Coutinho. And we've seen that from Firmino at Liverpool. And so again, it's just a different style of play. And for me, I would like to see Firmino in there because Jesus kind of disappears from matches for long stretches of matches. It's not necessarily his fault. It's just the way his game plays and the way Brazil plays. They don't necessarily look for him as a focal point. They look for him just in rare moments. I mean, the whole play funnels through Neymar and Coutinho attacking wise, and Willian got more involved today. But if Firmino's in there, I think more of the play would be a little bit more fluid. And so I would like to see that. But again, it's tough to argue. Brazil's in the quarterfinals with Jesus, and I think we'll likely see him continue. But if you have thoughts on that debate, please let us know there. So again, Mexico goes out in the round of 16 for the 7th tournament in a row. Condolences to them, and Brazil progresses on. They look like they're really rolling. They look like a really strong team and one of the favorites to take home the title, which, I mean, it's Brazil, so they're always kind of going to be a favorite on that front. Moving on to the Japan versus Belgium game, and I am still sweating from that game. That was so intense, so crazy. It finished 3-2 to Belgium. Belgium was trailing 2-0 in the second half. It was just wild. First off, Vincent Kompany comes back into the lineup for Belgium. I say back, but this is his first start at the World Cup. He had picked up a groin injury in pre-World Cup training. He's finally back. I know he made a substitute appearance in their third match against England, but this is his first start. He looks pretty good out there. You know, it's always good to see him back. He's such a good player, and he's just had such a poor run of luck with injuries, and you just wish him well. At least I do. Japan came out and was pressing high from the start, which isn't something that I think a lot of people expected. You know, I think a lot of people expected them to operate more like Russia played Spain, where they were exceptionally organized defensively, but they were definitely in a low block. They were kind of packed into a tighter space. Japan came out and played almost the opposite. They were wide open. They were pushing up on Belgium. They weren't giving them any time to possess and play out of the back, and it worked. I mean, Belgium was off their game until kind of the 60th, 70th minute when they started to finally turn things on. But Japan was arguably had the stronger of play. I say that now that I think about the game. I think Japan looked really good early. Then Belgium had a really good run of play late in the first half. But then the second half happened and Japan looked like the stronger side. So now that I'm saying it out loud, it seems like the halves sort of mirrored each other. Japan came out and played better in the early part of the first half, better in the early part of the second half. Belgium played better in the latter part of the first half and played better in the latter part of the second half. So, hey, you know, I guess I can work things out when I'm doing this thing by myself. Inouye was staying, the Japanese winger who was the left wing, left midfield, however you want to classify their formation. He was staying very wide and kind of creating space by continually staying wide when Japan was in possession. And, you know, a lot of times you'll see when the ball's on the other side of the field, the opposite winger. So if the ball was on the right side, Inouye would have been tucked in a bit more. That wasn't really happening. He was staying very wide and trying to pull Belgium's defense apart just by, you know, him being wider. And so that was an interesting sort of tactical wrinkle. And he had a fantastic game. He was one of Japan's best players throughout the tournament. I would say he's probably their best player. Belgium, throughout the first half, and I guess both teams had this to a certain extent, it seemed like they were trying to pass one time too many, or they were just slightly indecisive in the final third. And they were looking for, you know, there's a cliche, you're looking for the perfect shot, or they were just trying to overdo it a bit much. And I felt like there were opportunities. I know Carrasco had one. I think there were a couple others where just have a shot. You know, at a certain point, you're either inside the 18 or right around the 18. An opportunity presents itself. You don't need to walk the ball into the net. You got to just get a shot off. And, you know, they were allowing Japan to get into passing lanes and just toe poke the ball away, or that final ball would just be slightly behind someone when they could have shot. And so, you know, Japan was doing it to an extent as well, but I just noted Belgium particularly just seemed like they could have had more shots and didn't. Jan Vertonghen, I thought, did not have a particularly good game. I can speak very well. Jan Vertonghen did not have a particularly good game. I know he got the goal in the second half, but he had 4 or 5 just terrible giveaways in the first half, and then he had a few in the second half. It looked like he wasn't communicating with his teammates. They just weren't on the same page. It looked like he was under-hitting passes in certain instances. And, you know, Japan's first goal was a result of Vertonghen making a mistake. So I didn't think he actually played very well, though he did get a goal and, you know, was instrumental in Belgium's comeback. But again, I did not think he played well in this match. Belgium, throughout the first half and really throughout the game, they were also pressing high. So after Japan had that good period of play early in the first half, Belgium then had a good period of play in the latter part. And when that was happening, they did a good job of just keeping the pressure on Japan. They didn't let them get their breath and, you know, possess out of the back. They were swarming to the ball and putting pressure on them to create turnovers and get the ball back. So I thought they were doing a pretty good job of that. You don't always see that at the international level because a pressing system requires a lot of communication and understanding. And with these teams not having a ton of time together, you know, the way that you would at a club team, you don't always see it. But, you know, because they have 3 weeks to prepare for the World Cup and all of that, you start to see a little bit more pressing systems. And that was good to see from Belgium. 44th minute, Courtois just lets the ball roll through his legs. So it's a shot that gets deflected by a Japanese player and it's slowly rolling to Courtois. He bends down to pick it up and he bends down like you would field almost like a baseball with your legs sort of wide, and he goes to pick it up and he just He gets ahead of himself and he goes to pick it up and run at the same time, and he actually drops it through his own legs. And the ball slowly rolling to his goal line, he's able to recover, but that was just a really nervy moment from a keeper at the highest level. He was able to recover and had some fantastic saves in the second half, but you could see the nerves from that. Side note, Courtois is just so interesting looking. His neck is so long, he looks really odd. I know he's like 6'7" or 6'8". He just looks stretched out, and he's just an interesting looking dude back there. But he's a monster just from the size that he takes up in the net. And he's an interesting guy, but he's one of the best keepers in the world, and he showed that later in the match. But just needed to throw that out there. The first half finished 0-0, but it was pretty entertaining, back and forth. It wasn't like the matches from yesterday where we had Spain just dominating Russia sitting back, and then Croatia and Denmark, which wasn't too eventful. This was 0-0, but this was a highly eventful 0-0 in the first half. And the second half was even more entertaining, and that's where we got the goals. So let's talk about the second half. Japan gets the first goal in the 48th minute. Dries Mertens has a bad turnover. They're trying to play combination play. Belgium's trying to play combination play at the top of the Japanese, penalty box where they're attacking. And I think Meunier plays it into him, and he's trying to play it right back to him. And it may not have been Meunier. It may have been one of the midfielders, but Mertens just doesn't get enough power on it. And Japan takes it. The ball eventually makes its way to Shibasaki, who plays a through ball into kind of the Belgian defense, so the left side of the Belgian defense, so where in between Vertonghen and company. It isn't a particularly good through ball. Vertonghen steps across and should be able to, at his level, get something on it more than he does. So he gets across and he kind of lets the ball slip under him. I don't know if he switched off mentally, if the ball was hit maybe with a little bit more pace than what he expected. And what he ended up doing is getting enough touch on the ball to slow it down perfectly for the Japanese winger who was cutting in. And it was just, again, not a great play from Vertonghen, who did not have a particularly good game, but he made up for it. And Haraguchi then collects the ball for Japan. Now, he takes his time when he gets into the box, and he actually allows Vertonghen to get back into position. And I thought this was a mistake. I thought Haraguchi should have hit the shot that he ended up hitting 2 touches earlier. But what he ends up doing is he collects the ball, he cuts into the left to, I guess, offset Vertonghen after he allowed him to get back, and then quickly cuts back to the right. So eventually he reworked the space that he had initially already. And so, again, maybe it just helped him collect his composure, and then hits an absolutely fantastic shot far post. Courtois had no chance, and Japan takes the lead 1-0. Wasn't really against the run of play. I think both teams had chances, and again, came off of a quick counter and unfortunate mistake from Vertonghen on that play, but Japan takes the lead 1-0. Something not a lot of people expected going into the match. Shortly after that, Japan makes it 2-0. Inoue, who, again, I thought was Japan's best player at this tournament, although Kawasaki, the goalkeeper, has a good shout for being Japan's best keeper, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But before Inoue's goal, Hazard came back and hit the post for Belgium. Belgium had some great combination play to get into the box and almost leveled the match a couple minutes before that, and just wasn't able to do it. You almost felt like it may not have been their day, but it clearly was. On Inoue's goal, Belgium wasn't able to clear the ball, and it ultimately came to Kagawa. I know. Kagawa at the top of the box. Sorry, when I'm doing this myself, I stumble over my words. I get in my own head. But Kagawa collects the ball at the top of the box. And this was really weird from Belgium because only Axel Witsel pressured him. And there was a bunch of Belgian players in the area, but Witsel was the only one pressuring Kagawa, and Kagawa, maneuvers away from him and lays it back to Inoue. And again, no Belgian players moved to close down the shot other than Witsel. I thought the Belgian players kind of left Witsel out to dry, and they weren't really supporting him. It may have been an instance where there were so many defenders right around that everybody assumed somebody else would go close it down, but nobody closes it down outside of Witsel, but he doesn't get there because he's already been tracking Kagawa, and Inoue just hits a fantastic shot into the far post. Kind of like a knuckler. Again, not much you can really fault Courtois for there. And Japan takes a 2-0 lead. It was, insane. And you thought, I have Belgium winning this thing as my, surprise pick. And I was definitely feeling nervous at this point. But Japan Belgium, I should say, is able to get back and push through. Now, Lukaku has a pretty bad miss in the 62nd minute. Meunier plays in a great cross. Lukaku's inside the 6-yard box, and he gets a header to it and just flicks it wide. I mean, you thought at that point that just Belgium weren't going to score, and it was going to be Japan's day. But again, they didn't do that. I thought once Belgium went down 2-0, they almost just felt like they had to keep everybody forward. And you saw this in a couple of instances where the 3 center backs were possessing the ball, and then there was absolutely no midfield, and then you had 6 guys standing along the Japanese defensive line, and you just had no midfielders checking back to the ball to allow Belgium to possess. And when you're trailing, I know you need to get forward and you need to get goals, but you still need people in the midfield to possess the ball and work your way forward. You don't just want to start hoofing long balls, especially in the 60th minute or 65th minute. When I noted this, I thought that they were pressing too far forward. They were playing like it was the 93rd minute and they needed a goal, rather than it was the 60th minute and they needed to get 2 goals back. I thought that it just didn't make sense. And credit to Martinez, he made some subs and they were able to get back into the match. 69th minute, Vertonghen gets his goal. Both of Belgium's first 2 goals came off of their own corners and sort of broken plays, and then their third goal came off of a Japanese corner. So all 3 goals resulted from corners, but none of them really directly, which is just something interesting to note. But Belgium earns a corner. It was cleared, but it wasn't cleared well by Japan. And, we saw that a couple of times, and the ball got worked out. Oh no, this was the one. Sorry. I'm thinking of the second goal. So I'm going through my notes here. Sorry, bear with me. So this was the one where the ball got bounced around and eventually it came to the Japanese sort of left back area. I don't know if it was the Japanese left back who actually cleared it, but what ended up happening is the Japanese player just basically booted the ball just straight into the air. Or he booted it very high. And instead of clearing it out and away from the net, he actually booted it across the 18-yard box and over to the other side. And Vertonghen was on that side and was able to get his head to it. Now, he heads it back across goal. I don't think there's any way he is going for goal on this play. I think he is definitely going for a cross back across the face of the goal, likely around the 6-yard box. And I think he just gets his header wrong. The ball is way up high. It's very difficult to control. And so you understand that he might mishit it. And the mishit ends up really working out because it ends up looping perfectly over Kawasaki and into the far post, clips off the crossbar. It just works as a perfect chip. And Belgium's right back in it. It's 2-1. And that was definitely Vertonghen's best moment of the match. Shortly after that, so what was it, 5 minutes later? So that came in the 69th minute. 5 minutes later, Belgium gets an equalizer. So again, it comes from a corner. It was not cleared properly. I think Yoshida got his head to it, but the ball bounced outside of the box. It gets worked to, I think, De Bruyne, who collects it, and he plays it back out wide to Hazard, who's on the left side. He's the one who hit the corner. Hazard works some space for himself. It chips in across, just a delicate cross. It's not hit with a ton of pace, which I think Belgium should have been doing more. They had the height advantage on Japan throughout the match, and especially once Fellaini came on, I thought Belgium should have been doing more to just loft it up there. We've seen Fellaini do this for Manchester United. They have Lukaku. They had obviously their center backs forward because it was a set piece. And so I thought Belgium should have been doing this more often, but this play works out perfect. Hazard hits it into just a very dangerous area, and Fellaini does what he does. He gets up and he scores a goal and make it 2-2. Headed goal. Again, just great work from Belgium on that. 2-2, just craziness. It was just so exciting to watch. Everybody, I'm getting texts from everyone. My parents are watching. They're, talking about my mom screaming at the television and she has no rooting interest. And, I'm sitting here watching, just sweating, yelling at the TV. And it was just fantastic to watch. 85th minute, late 85th, early 86th minute. Kawashima. Shit, I've been calling him by the wrong name. Kawashima. I apologize for that. Kawashima who is the Japanese goalkeeper, makes 2 fantastic saves. So the first one comes off of a cross, I think, and this is what happens when I don't have people here and it's just me talking to myself. So apologies here, but he makes 2 huge saves. I know the one was on Lukaku header. I can't remember if the other one was a header as well, but he makes a diving save across the goal to palm it away. And then Belgium still is able to possess the ball. They get in another cross and he makes another fantastic save on a Lukaku header. And again, he played fantastic. I highlighted it in an earlier podcast that I thought he had the save of the World Cup so far on a header from Poland, where he has to shuffle across his line and reach back and just palms it off the goal line. So I thought he had a fantastic tournament, arguably the best goalkeeper at the tournament so far. I think Ochoa might have a case, and obviously Kawashima had that mistake against Senegal where he punched the ball into Mane and it resulted in a goal. So outside of that mistake, I thought he's had just a fantastic tournament. So props to Kawashima there. Apologies for the name, getting that wrong. After those saves, Courtois was able to not redeem himself, but show that he had value for Belgium as well. And there was an opportunity where a deflected shot happened. I think it came off of a Belgian player, but Japan fired in a shot. It got deflected, and then Courtois was able to readjust himself, save it out for a corner. A little bit later than that, there was a free kick late, and Honda just hits a bullet, and it's dipping and it's moving all over the place, and Courtois does well to palm that away for the corner kick. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that the resulting corner kick is how Belgium counters and scores. So I may have that wrong because, again, it's just me doing it, but I think that's what happens. Either way, Japan has a corner kick late in the match. It's the 93rd, 94th minute. I don't remember the exact minute where they have their corner kick, but they float it in. Nobody challenges well for the ball, and Courtois is able to collect it. He gets forward and rolls it out to De Bruyne, and Japan, for once, is just not organized, and there's just acres of space in the middle of the field. De Bruyne drives through the middle of the park. He probably has the ball for 50, 60 yards, just straight down the middle of the field without really being challenged. And as he's driving, and as soon as he gets into the Japanese half, Lukaku makes an incredibly smart run. He is on the right side as De Bruyne's coming up the middle. And as De Bruyne keeps coming, Lukaku cuts in behind, basically across the face of De Bruyne. And when he does that, he drags the Japanese defender with him. And that leaves just the entire right side of the pitch open. As Lukaku does that, Meunier, the Belgian right back, has been flying up the side, and it just now is just in acres of space because Lukaku made that run, dragged the Japanese defender out. De Bruyne De Bruyne just plays the perfect ball. Oftentimes you'll see guys try to force that into Lukaku or try to play it out wide to the left because there was another man out wide to the left. De Bruyne makes the right play, cuts it back across, and Meunier is just in, right? Nobody in front of him. As he drives in, he, again, makes the absolute right decision. As soon as he gets into the 18-yard box penalty area, he plays across on the ground, and Lukaku has stopped his run across and come back in. And as he's coming back across, again, he's dragging that same, I think it's the same defender. If not, it's Yoshida who has now taken him. And as he gets this new defender, he draws them back over and has the awareness. I don't know if Chadli called him off or if he just had this awareness himself. But again, so much of this play was fantastic from basically everybody on Belgium, but Lukaku doesn't touch the ball at all on this play, and he is basically why they scored. And so it's unfortunate he doesn't get the assist, or, I think everybody is smart enough to give him recognition, but I just want to highlight how important he was to this goal and how well he did to create all of that space and to basically allow Chadli to tap it in. And so after Meunier plays the ball on the ground, again, it's into a dangerous area. It's probably meant for Lukaku, but again, he has the awareness or Chadli has called him off. Either way, he does a dummy and he doesn't try to hit that ball. Oftentimes you'll see a selfish striker try to hit it and a defender is right on them. They'll get a block. He runs over the ball. Chadli there, wide open, tap in, 94th minute. I'm standing on my couch screaming. No rooting interest. I guess I've picked Belgium, so I have a slight rooting interest, but no real interest. It was just drama. It was like the Germany game all over again. Buzzer beater. It was just incredible. And Belgium goes on 3-2. What a freaking match. Fantastic ending. Chadli scores, Fellaini scores. Both those are subs by Roberto Martinez. I know a lot of people, myself included, have questioned him as a manager and some of his decisions, but he got those spot on. They're substitutes late in the match, and they make a difference. What a game. What a freaking game. And so, again, love to hear your thoughts on it. Please let us know. Before we talk about tomorrow's matches, I want to give a plug for our partner, StadiumScene.tv. So StadiumScene.tv is a travel guide for It's an online travel guide for people going to sporting events in the United States. So if you're going to a soccer match, if you're going to a hockey game, if you're going to a baseball game or any sporting event, you want to go to stadiumscene.tv because they have user reviews and recommendations for what to do at the stadiums and around them, where to park, what bars to visit, before and after, where to eat, things to do. So you want to go check out stadiumscene.tv for that. In addition to that content, they partner with content creators like us at Bros Talking Soccer, the Fabulous Lads podcast. Those guys are hilarious. Kevin and Martin, Game Day Tourist, Mark Lawson, we've had on a bunch of times. They're on there, and they have a bunch of other people too. It's not specific to soccer. They have all different sports. They just added a NASCAR partner. They have basketball, American football, baseball, all the different sports. And they link those people's content on stadiumscene.tv. So you can check out blog posts, videos, YouTube videos, podcasts, so on and so forth. So please go check out stadiumscene.tv. With that, let's talk about Tuesday's matches. So we have Sweden versus Switzerland as the early match, and then Colombia versus England as the later match. Going to be exciting times. Now, the Sweden versus Switzerland in the Swiss Derby, I have Sweden getting through here. I just think that they are so stout defensively, and this is going to be a tight game one way or another. This might be a 0-0 and go to penalties. This might be a 1-0 victory for either team. I don't have a ton of confidence in saying, Sweden is definitely going to get the victory. Switzerland, I can definitely see, claiming the victory. I think I think Switzerland has the better players. I think that they're a bit more talented, but I just like this Sweden team. I just liked how they've grinded results to get to this point. They came out of their World Cup qualifying group, including the Netherlands, and they had to go to a playoff against Italy. Nobody expected them to win. They won that. They came into the group with Germany, Mexico, and South Korea. I had them finishing last. Most people had them finishing, I think, third or fourth. Some people may have had them finishing second, but I don't think anybody had them winning that group. They won that group. And so at this point, I'm done doubting them. I think that they find a way to grind out a result. I like Granqvist, their center back. He's a great leader. And I just think that they're very organized defensively. They steer teams out wide and force them to swing in crosses, and they can deal with those crosses very well. And so, I don't think this is going to be the most pretty or the most exciting game, but I think it's going to be a grinded out result. And in grinded out games, I think Sweden gets the victory. But again, this is going to be tight, and I don't want to completely discount Switzerland because they have talented players. Xhaka Shaqiri has been fantastic for them, and they have some difference makers. And so sometimes in tight matches, you need a difference maker. And if it comes to that, I favor Switzerland's difference makers. So I know I'm kind of waffling here, but I'll say Sweden wins 1-0. I'll say Sweden wins 1-0. No penalties. They win 1-0. They find a way to get it done in regular time. Colombia versus England. This is going to be a good, fun match. Colombia, I love the way they play. They are exciting. They're attacking. I don't see them sitting back in any way. I expect them to come out and try to take it to England. And I don't expect England to try to bunker and counter or anything like that. I expect this to be a fun match, similar to the match we just saw here. It's a knockout round, and anything can kind of happen. And, with the pressure that comes along with knockout play at the World Cup, teams sometimes play a bit more conservatively. But again, I'm really hopeful that this match doesn't go that route. I like Colombia to get through here, but again, I don't feel incredibly strongly about that pick. I can see either team going through, and obviously with England having a lot of Premier League players I follow, and they have some Liverpool players, which is the English team that I support. I'd be happy with them getting through, but again, I really like Colombia's talent. I love their center back pairing of Sanchez and Mina. I think Sanchez had some shaky performances earlier in the tournament, but he's been doing much better. And Mina's been pretty solid throughout. And then going forward, Quintero, Falcao, and Cuadrado have been really good for Colombia. And if James is fully fit, which I still don't know if he's fully fit, but even if he's on as a late sub, he can be a real difference maker for that Colombia team. And even without him, I'll give the slight edge to Colombia. But again, I expect this to be a fun match. I expect it to be a bit more high scoring. So maybe like a 2-1, maybe even a 2-2, and then goes to penalties, and in penalties, anything can happen. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun. The Sweden versus Switzerland match may not be as much fun, but the Colombia versus England is going to be a fantastic way to end the knockout stages. So, I'm looking forward to that. And so that brings us kind of to the end of the podcast. Looks like my brothers weren't able to join us, but since you're here, I would appreciate if you go check out the Soccer Tavern. So in addition to Bros Talking Soccer, I have a YouTube channel called the Soccer Tavern where I make videos about the history, culture, and philosophy of the beautiful game. I have all different kinds of videos on there. I have videos about terminology. So why is it called a nutmeg in soccer, or why is it called a pitch or a cap for international players, which is relevant to the World Cup. And we have Premier League club history videos. We have the history of position numbers in soccer. But for World Cup, which is what this podcast is about, we did the national team histories of all 32 teams at the World Cup. So they're about 5 to 10 minutes each, and they tell you all different kinds of interesting information about the countries and the national teams, when the federation was created, and maybe a little bit of the creation story and a little bit of the history of the federation, how they've done in major international tournaments, an interesting fact about the team, why their nicknames are what they are. And so, they're a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun researching them. And so if you could please go check them out and let me know your thoughts, I would love to hear that. That brings us to the end of the podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please, let us know. It would be fantastic if you gave us a rating on the podcast platform that you listen to. It would just really help us out, and it would go a long way. And if you do that, please share it with us. We would love to thank you and would just greatly appreciate that. If you want to get in contact with us, our Twitter is @BTSoccerPod. If email's your more preferred level of communication, our email is bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. Please check out our Bros Talking Soccer website, which is brostalkingsoccerpodcast.com. You can read about us, check out past episodes, and so much more. I'm working on a kind of store feature, and we should be launching that pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to another World Cup podcast. We will have a guest tomorrow. Paul from Over the Bar is going to be on, and hopefully Matt will be back. I think he should be back, but he's in school now, and you got to get your schoolwork done, which I can definitely understand and relate to. I guess I can't relate to it, but back in the day I could relate to it. I'm well past school age at this point. I'm done rambling. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow. See you, everybody. Bye.